in a brief statement, maybe about 5 minutes, how you cope with your role. How is the organization doing? It is doing a great deal of very useful work for everybody, and yet it is in the line of fire. So it's a challenge for you managerially. And after your statement for about 5 minutes, we'll try to also tease out some other questions in the next 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So do you want me to do the statement from here or from there?
I think from here.
From here, okay. Thank you, David, Excellencies, colleagues, and friends. Thank you for this opportunity. It's often overlooked, but since the birth of the United Nations 8 years ago, multilateralism has delivered incredible results for humanity. I'm starting with what multilateralism or the UN has achieved because from what I listened today and also in other fora, we're focusing mainly on the difficulties, on the ruptures and so on. But I think keeping a balance would be very important, and that's why I wanted to start with what multilateralism has achieved the past 80 years. So the incredible results for humanity, which I said are the UN Charter, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the Fourth Geneva Convention, the Paris Agreement, and other international treaties have unquestionably made the world a safer and more peaceful place. And I will give you one figure also. For instance, if you take life expectancy, it increased from 45 years at birth in 1945, that's the founding of the UN, to 73.5 years life expectancy in 2025. This is 28.5 years of gain. This is because of peace, relatively better, development, and you name it. In health alone, smallpox has been eradicated during the Cold War, actually, and polio is on the brink. Today, more than 80% of the world's children are immunized against killers, including measles, tetanus, diphtheria, pneumonia, compared with just 5% 50 years ago. Just in the past 25 years, deaths from HIV, malaria, TB has declined significantly. Maternal mortality and under 5 mortality declined significantly. So mothers, children are surviving. And as I mentioned this morning, just last year, the World Health Assembly adopted the WHO Pandemic Agreement, which once ratified will be a powerful instrument of international law for keeping the world safer from future pandemics. This international law was agreed last year in the middle of all these challenges that we're facing. And as you can see, still member states, countries are committed to multilateralism, and I could go on. Multilateralism and the UN in particular have delivered for humanity and continue to do so. But our world is changing, and as many of you said, rupturing. And the UN must change with it and make significant changes while recognizing the progress that the multilateral system has made. We must be honest that some of the UN structures, governance systems, and ways of working still date from the post-war period in which it was created. Of course, large multilateral institutions do not have a reputation for being nimble or agile, partly because of the nature of their governance. Member state processes are the essence of multilateralism, but they're rarely fast. The shocks of the past year, although they have happened for the wrong reasons, have brought forward reforms that were needed in some cases, were already happening, but too slowly. At WHO, I have always said that change is a constant, and the same must be true for the UN. When I began as Director General in 2017, we initiated the biggest set of reforms in the organization's history. In particular, we identified the organization's over-reliance on a handful of donors as a major risk, and we took several steps to address it. Most significantly, we proposed, and in 2022, the World Health Assembly approved a plan to progressively increase assessed contributions to 50% of the base budget from just 14% at the time. Our member states have also initiated a process of governance reform. They have given us a mandate to lead a process of reforming the global health architecture or ecosystem. And over the past year, WHO has been through a difficult but necessary period of prioritization and realignment in the wake of the withdrawal of our largest donor. We have now almost completed that process. We have reached a point of stability, and we're moving forward. But change remains a constant, given the rupture that we see. We're continuing with reforms to our programmatic work and our financing, which together will deliver long-term stability for WHO and a more independent WHO that can serve its member states without fear or favor. A WHO that's leaner but more effective and efficient. In parallel, we're engaging actively in the UN 80 reforms. We're participating in multiple work packages. Reform is not about saving institutions for their own sake. It's about preserving the capacity for collective action in a fractured world to address shared threats. And while reform is important, if member states don't respect the charter they wrote or the rules they created, they're undermining their own organization. In the end, the UN is what its member states make it. WHO and the UN, of which we are a part, have for 8 decades enjoyed the trust of member states. But trust must be earned not once, every day. All of us who believe in the power, value, and relevance of the UN must continue to work to earn that trust, not for our own sake, but for the sake of the people we serve. I thank you, and back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Tedros. Thank you. You've already set up perfectly our panel discussion, but let me try to tease out a couple of more points, maybe with a slight provocation. We just heard a panel on multilateralism, and there were many definitions. Some of the definitions present the situation as multilateralism equals institutions, which I think is not fair, it's not correct. Multilateralism probably is a state of mind. It's a state of mind which makes you want to deal multilaterally with others. How do you navigate this sometimes false narrative? You obviously are clear about the need for reform, organizational reform, as all organizations are, but how is it, how difficult is it to finesse this and make your stakeholders, but also the public, understand the difference here?
Yeah, no, I think I fully agree with what you said. Multilateralism is a mindset issue. And those who are creating the multilateral system should believe in multilateralism. And they should understand why they want it. As you know, if I take, for instance, some of the basic things, we have shared threats. And we need multilateralism to address those shared threats united. For instance, if I take my own area, pandemics, no country alone can fight pandemics because viruses don't know borders, or they don't care about our maps, or don't care about our politics. Wherever humanity is, they will attack. That's why we have to defend ourselves, defend humanity together. And there are other borderless issues like climate change. It's a climate crisis. There is a climate crisis. Unless in unison we save our universe, it's going to be a disaster. And then, of course, peace and security, the very pillar of the UN. We can secure peace and security through international law, through rules-based order. So we need multilateralism. So we need to have that mindset, as you rightly said. But when we say multilateralism, again, there is another part of it. Of course, there are institutions that will help with the multilateral system or these issues member states want to address. And the organizations which we call, for instance, the UN Secretariat or the WHO Secretariat. And on the other hand, there is the governance. So I said it in my speech. When I say the governance, the member states are actually, they own the UN, they own WHO. And they set the rules and they govern these institutions. So when we talk about, for instance, multilateralism is failing, it has to address both. There is the Secretariat part, the mandate of the Secretariat, and there is also the mandate of the member states or the mandate of the nations who are members of this multilateral system. So when we talk about the weaknesses or reforms on multilateral system, we have to address both. Actually, I could argue that many of course, the Secretariat has problems, but many of the systemic problems come from the governance itself. For instance, take the UN Security Council. The UN Security Council, when I was foreign minister from 2012 to 2016, I was a member of a group actually working on reforming the UN Security Council, especially to address the representation problem or the diversity. You remember the former Prime Minister of Norway saying earlier that Latin America is not represented, Africa is not represented, the Middle East is not represented. And we were pushing for UN Security Council reform. But the problem starts, I will be honest with you, from the P5 countries themselves. They don't want any reform to the UN Security Council because they enjoy the veto power. We discuss honestly. And this is a result of the model they created in 1945. The victors have it all. They took the lion's share, and now when reform means they have to share, there is resistance. So if the UN is going to change, it should start from the governance itself. It should start from the UN Security Council itself. And it should start from the P5 countries' real commitment to change. You cannot have a multilateral system going forward with a model that was created immediately after the Second World War when victors had it all. So it's a change in the UN Security Council, in the UN governance itself, the governance reform, a serious, very serious one, that can help us to bring a significant change. And that's a political change. As you know, it's political intervention, that's surgical intervention. So we want a paradigm shift, then the governance has to change. But at the same time, the UN Secretariat has to change, significant change, because there is rupture, but the lion's share is with the governance itself, and more responsibility, I think the P5 countries should take, and of course, the rest.
Thank you. You've just brilliantly set up our panel, but I cannot resist the temptation, having you here, to ask you, since you've served as Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Health, but also now Director General of WHO, so you've been on both sides. From which side did it look more sort of unfair or problematic when you were foreign minister? Did you see the predicament of international organizations, or was there some new revelation when you came over to the side of the international organizations vis-a-vis your government position? It's a little bit of a tricky question, but
I think you can see normally when you're the outsider, you don't understand, for instance, the UN system very well, so you may have wrong understanding. So it helped me actually once I started working for the UN to have a balanced view of the UN. So I believe that I have better understanding, and it's not because I served the UN, but I'm a strong believer of the multilateral system, because our world cannot function without multilateralism unless we talk to each other. Multilateral systems means talking to each other, dialogues, and international laws. Of course, that should be respected, not undermined like what we see now. So we need that, and I have seen, being a UN family member now, I have seen more actually the importance of a multilateral system. I don't think we can function without it. So even if we don't have it, we have to reinvent it. So very strong believer. Of course, even from outside, it was the same, but even stronger now. And I'm very fortunate and honored actually to serve humanity. But one other thing I saw once I was inside the UN is countries, of course, can have will have national interests. It's obvious. But multilateral systems belong to all of them. So organizations, for instance, like WHO, should serve without fear and favor. But for that to happen, the member states should also be disciplined, because, as you know, there is a lot of interest from several quarters to dictate international organizations in their own interest. If you have a multilateral organization, it means it belongs to all 194 member states, so it should be supported in order to operate without fear nor favor. And the most important part of the ensuring the independence of the organization is in the financing model. Most of the international organizations are financed through voluntary contribution with some conditions attached. But if member states are committed to multilateral organization, they have to make sure that most of the funding to the multilateral organization should be flexible funding through membership fee. Everybody should share the burden. Then the international organizations can operate with independence and also stability, avoiding shocks like we see now because of the finance. So like they say the economy is stupid, it's also the financing model stupid. International organizations can only be truly independent if they financially also truly belong to all member states. The finance is shared and they have a stable finance to avoid shocks and also to be independent. By the way, in WHO, that's what we are trying to do. By 2031, based on the finance reform we have started, we will reach at least 60% of our funding will be from membership fee or from assets contribution. That will help us to avoid shocks in the future and also more independent. Actually, I can see from the reform we are starting now, we have already started in 2022 was the first approval of the funding. not only by 2031, by 2036, in 10 years from now, there will be more stability, could be even more than 80% of the funding. So that's the way member states should truly own the international organizations, but that comes with genuine commitment to finance them as well, because it's the finance model that will define on how they operate. So being an insider, that's one critical thing I have seen, which we're trying to do something for WHO, but the whole UN, I think member states should take it seriously.
Thank you so much. I could continue this and ask the panel members to come, but that's not the format. So thank you so much for setting up our panel on the UN Plus. It's a very open-ended panel, which is good. The theme is open-ended. So thank you so much.